Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. 19 years ago, the Violence Against Women Act became law. But even with this landmark legislation, domestic violence is still an epidemic. Each year in this country, 1 in 3 women is killed by a spouse or partner. And almost 1.5 million women are assaulted by an intimate partner. In New York City, the domestic violence hotline gets more than 310 calls a day. Sally MacNichol, co-executive director of Connect, is a pioneer in the effort to prevent interpersonal violence, and she's my guest today. And welcome.
Oh, nice to be here. Thank you, Ronnie.
So has a lot changed since in the past 19 years?
A lot has changed. A lot has definitely changed. There are now, many more shelters, many more beds. There are legal services. There are legal remedies that we never had before. So for some people, some women in the population, some people in the population, this has certainly been a godsend. I mean, it's been excellent that we have this. And I want to say that, at the same time, we have to remember when you just read those statistics, 1 in 3 women, those are the women that we know about. Those are the women that report. We often say in our work in the city, that we hear about 20% of the violence that's happening, and then about 20% or 15% of those people that report actually go forward or get some kind of remedy. So we have to really, as you said, it's an epidemic. It's still an epidemic. And VAWA, I mean, we saw what happened when they were trying to reauthorize it. Yeah. So that was pretty shocking.
The big problems in the Senate and the House.
And the Senate and the House. Yeah,
and the House. They were.
Well, there were 3 additional, I believe, and I'm not an expert in this, but additional, the Native American, giving Native American women, people abused and on reservations, a chance to
access to the United States court system.
Yes, and also because right now, if you're abused or raped off of the reservation, you don't have access to those courts or access to the courts inside the reservation. And if you're a white man, and actually the Native American women are the population that have more people abusing and sexually assaulting them that are not of their own group than other women. Usually it's intra, but in Native American situation, if I'm not mistaken, it's mostly white men. So white men could take Native American women that rape or assault them on the reservation or off the reservation, and there would be no consequences. So by going against that, that was a pretty horrendous message that people in our government were saying that they wanted that. But anyway, that was passed. And also another big part of it was inclusion of the LGBTQ community. And that's so critical, so critical. We know that the same amount of abuse goes on in the gay and lesbian and bisexual transgender community as it does in the straight community. So there have to be, there has to be free and open access for everybody. So that was excellent. And then the other sticking point and very complex, this very complex stuff is the remedies for immigrant men and women, for women. And I know that some people aren't happy with I mean, there were some things that changed, and there's some protections that immigrant women have that they didn't have before, but it's not the full thing. But I guess just in general, the fact that there was so much pushback was pretty discouraging, and that's just in that very narrow space, but culturally and socially and to understand it beyond a criminal problem, is really important.
And, what's insidious about this also is, I think we've learned, haven't we, that it gets passed down generation to generation.
Oh, it's absolutely.
The violence in the home then gets repeated and repeated, even with the victims, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think one of the problems about the way we think about domestic violence is we think about it both as an episode, you know, as an event, and that's pretty much the legal definition. And then we just think about the people that are involved in it. We do now think about children a little bit more than we did 20 years ago. And we definitely see that there are effects on children and that this is horrendous and that it is carried down. But it affects for generations, you know, and it affects the whole community. So we think of it in a much too individualistic and personal way instead of really understanding it as a social problem.
Does it get interpreted by victims and perpetrators as traditional behavior?
Well, some
it's
people,
not
you know,
unexpected.
I mean, yeah,
That's what you expect in life.
Yeah, I mean, some people, it's not that women accept it per se or like it, but there's a sense of fatalism if your entire community supports that behavior. And again, you know, just to go back to VAWA for a minute and the legal aspect, legally it's about physical violence. But what we know from doing the work is that the emotional, that the psychological, the spiritual abuse, the economic abuse, all these tactics are really to control someone's life. And it's very hard to get at what like Evan Stark has a great book called Coercive, you know, about coercive control. It's very hard to resist that kind of control when you're in a relationship, a family, a culture, an entire community that actually accepts the second-class status of women, so that dominating a woman is a natural thing. Now, it's not. It's, you know, I don't want to make it simplistic, and it's definitely not. I also want to say, because we have a tendency to think, oh, it's the immigrant communities. Those, they, you know, they have that in their culture. Or, you know, it's across the board. It is across the board. It just manifests. I mean, we always say it's, you know, across race, gender, class. It's definitely a universal problem that has many different manifestations. And that's another problem with where the movement was pretty essentialist to begin with, right? So it's, in fact, I was reading something the other day about how, you know, we never would have had VAWA if middle-class white women didn't convince who voted, you know, who didn't convince the legislators that hey, it's happening in your families too. But what happened was the erasure. A lot of women of color, African American women, poor women, Latino, you know, across the board, immigrant women. Those different circumstances and resources were pretty erased from the equation. So there are a lot of people who are not going to invite, you know, the state to intervene in their family relationship for many reasons.
So you're an organizer, basically, a grassroots organizer. Yes. And the organization that you had or co-head is my old organization, Connect, for Public Disclosure, which doesn't run shelters.
No.
It does have a sideline of offering legal advice.
Yes, it does.
But essentially, it's out there in communities, reaching out to all the different groups that you just mentioned before, to what? To educate them about what it is and how to do it?
I mean, yes. I mean, we're trying to bring awareness, but beyond awareness, because awareness really isn't enough. Because I guess you could say we have awareness in the U.S. of domestic violence, but what we don't have is activism and the will to change. You know, so we're
support to the victims,
support to the victims, and support to the perpetrators, and to bystanders, and to the allies. So we're working. We partner with all different kinds of communities, and we make sure that we're not saying this is how you have to do it. I mean, we sort of call it the midwifery model, so that, you know, like a midwife who's helping someone give birth, you're present, you're bringing skills, you're bringing some technology and technical stuff to the situation, and your presence and a new consciousness, but the person giving birth is giving birth. And same with communities. Communities have resources, and they have roadblocks, you know, to changing the norms of their attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. So what we try to do is bring education, partner to help people cultivate their own strengths. And usually in every community there are people doing resistance, you know, who are the resistors and the organizers. And very often they don't even think of themselves as leaders. So oftentimes women don't necessarily think they're leaders or they don't have the standing in the community. But we partner with them particularly.
Like what?
You know,
Give me an example.
An example would be we worked with a group of South Asian women, and they came to visit, connect actually, because usually we're going out in the community. They felt they wanted that privacy. They worked with us for about a year and a half of just coming together in conversation and circles and sharing experience and learning and naming what their experience had been and finding out how they could work with other women in their particular community. And they each did projects. And for instance, one woman worked in a sari store, and she gave saris, and she gave information when she was selling saris to women, like this is what domestic violence is, this is where you could reach out for help. So that became a very strong group, and they're on their own now. They're working, they actually are presenting at national conferences on how to do community organizing in the South Asian community. We recently, we have a partnership with Women for Afghan Women, and they, 4 years ago, we've had it for quite a while, 4 years ago, we said, would you like to do some training with your faith leaders? And they said, it's probably maybe not right now. And this year we did, and we brought someone who was another partnership who does work in the Muslim community, a sheikh who knows the Quran and he came and did a training with 5 Afghani imams. And that makes a tremendous difference.
So the imam goes back with the people that he influences.
Right. And when someone comes to him, which we know happens a lot. In fact, Connect did a research project in the early 2000s, and we found one of our findings, we did surveys and focus groups, and one of our findings was that over 80% of people that we surveyed wanted to go to their faith leaders. So that's why we do a lot of work. But just imagine that someone goes to an imam who's really not familiar with the resources or the laws necessarily in this country. And they're very concerned about deportation, and they're very concerned about keeping the family together and keeping their community safe and not bringing any more state intervention into a community than is necessary. So how can they work with that woman, and how can the family understand? So there's, it's slow work, but it's really powerful because it can make such a big difference.
And you're a doctor of divinity, right?
I have a PhD in theology.
In theology, all right. To me, that's what it is.
Right.
And so, you have a whole group of faith-based organizations.
We partner with
lots of them. And are they receptive?
Well, I mean, the ones who are our partners are receptive because it's just gotten to a point where
they have to do something.
Yeah, I mean, and the numbers are the same. 1 in 3 women, in a Christian studies, 1 in 3 women in the pews. There's not a difference between inside and outside faith communities, even though, some people will say when you first go to speak with them, well, yeah, that's terrible, but we don't have that in our community. And the women in the community will tell you something different usually, or pastors, or or rabbis, or imams, or different kinds of priests who've said, no one's ever talked to me about that. I mean, I met a woman recently who's a real activist, grassroots, works in the church, and she's worked in that church for 20 years and many other churches. She goes to seminary now, and she said, I can't believe it. No one's ever talked to me about this. Why? Why is there such a silence? And once you start taking those veils off people's experience, I mean, I could speak for many hours about the kinds of disclosures that happen.
So the solution to this is similar in a way to the solution of poverty. I mean, we have to change the world.
We have to change the world. And that's what people don't, that's the place where there's a kind of a division, because of course, just for example, with anybody, what person supports domestic violence? There's no one. But when you get to root causes, when you start to look at the root causes of poverty, of violence, interpersonal violence, of war. All these things are connected.
Yeah,
they're
all are
connected, and they're all very rooted in ideas. You know, we have this paradigm that rules our consciousness pretty much, which is domination and subordination. I mean, that some people dominate and some people are, you know, subordinate to that, and some people are objects and some people are subjects, you know, and we really have that deeply in our consciousness. Of course, power and money and greed, you know, shape that paradigm. And so we have to really transform. First of all, we have to embrace nonviolence, and that, you know,
You can't.
you know, it's very difficult for people to make that commitment. And we know that the people who've made that commitment seem to be the ones that end up shot, you know,
Yeah.
and that it's the biggest challenge to the status quo is nonviolence in many ways, you know, so.
And it's so reflected in the world all the time.
Everywhere. It's
So that's
it's massive.
But it's depressing. So now what do we do
Well,
in the
it's
media?
depressing, but in some ways, I mean, people always say, how can you do this? How can you do this for
Yeah.
so many years? But, you know, what's depressing is when we don't talk about it. What's depressing is amnesia. What's depressing is erasing people's reality, percepticide. You know, when people have to kill their own perceptions because they can't figure out how to transform, you know, the situation.
Just thinking about what goes on now, the discussions about war and the discussions about defense budgets and all of that. Then you've got Swan and all the women from the military
Right.
who have exposed all the sexual harassment and terrible things in the military. It go on and on. Are we getting a better response from our elected officials? Are we putting it into the political debate? I don't know.
I think
To a
that
degree.
To a degree. I mean, certainly it's not silenced. I mean, certainly like what Swan has done is incredible. Like that's.
That's Service Women's, yeah.
Service Women's Action Network. They have brought this issue to the forefront, but I think it's really, again, to those deeper, you know, so we have it a little bit in the discourse. We have a lot of people left out still of the discourse for sure. I mean, we have, you know, so racism and poverty play a big role in all of this.
And look at what's happening on women's reproductive health. That's a reflection, isn't it, of what we're going to tell you what to do and the power of this stuff.
And don't forget that a leading cause of death, of maternal death in pregnancy, is homicide.
Yeah.
So that tells you something very profound, that the moment that someone's giving life is a dangerous moment for them, a dangerous time for women, that's serious. So that right there, that is kind of,
Yeah, what happens?
you know, that's a point.
Is the intention now to trafficking? How did that come about? It's interesting. I don't know where it came because it's got a lot of political support.
It has a lot of political support. I don't know really where that came from. I mean, it's very important that we're addressing it. Once again, it's, in my perception, it's been sort of de-linked or unlinked from all these other issues. And
which is too bad.
you know, and the same kinds of remedies are going there, which are legal remedies. But what are the conditions that create violence in families, trafficking of human beings? I mean, what are the conditions that create that? And I just don't think we go deep enough. We don't go to that conversation. Just the way we have a hard time talking about racism, you know, we just don't go there.
And then, and Sally, it comes to my mind that in our recent elections, in the primaries, you had such public reaction to the former governor's relationship with prostitution and to the former congressman's sex texting or whatever. It's all part of the same thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It is, and it's so amazing. So you could say that the public is receptive to this, but it's not, is it not being presented?
Well, you know, I mean, I think the reaction to Spitzer and Weiner is maybe more that they were stupid enough to get caught.
Yeah.
Therefore, what kind of
right.
kind of governing could they do if they weren't in control enough of themselves? I don't think it. I honestly don't think that people thought that it was violence against women, or I really think it was about, hey, you know,
and the
be in control.
The trafficking seems to be separate from the whole question of sex workers and prostitution,
Yeah,
as it's
well,
commonly known.
yeah.
But it comes together. It's the same
It comes together,
thing.
and it comes together with intimate violence.
Yeah.
Many of these things, I mean, now the big thing is trafficking, and so then the money sort of goes over that direction. The philanthropists are interested in that. You know, all these things are kind of trending. So for a while it's domestic violence, and then it's child sexual abuse, and then it's
Date rape,
trafficking, and then it's teen
stuff.
dating violence.
Teen
Instead of, and all these are important initiatives. I mean, there's not a question about that. But we still need to look at what is the thread, you know, that runs through all of them, and try to come up with some better solutions. And I do think that in addition to government response, that there needs to be support for community-based work and community-based organizing and change. And I mean,
And to come back to my original question, that is really shortchanged under the Violence Against Women Act.
yeah, I mean, first of all, it's, you know, it's good that there's money, but it's not like so much money, and there's a lot of competition between different, you know, nonprofit organizations to get that money. There are very stringent requirements that take a lot of time, the bureaucracy. I mean, it takes,
Professionalization that you have to fill out.
And then, and the idea that, you know, that this, I mean, I think that they're very careful about really funding programs that are too feminist or too, you know, based in a kind of oppositional point of view. So,
Are there any other programs like Connect?
oh, I think first of all, I think a lot of people now know that we have to work in communities and give, you know, change attitudes. I think that there's some organizations in California and Washington State. I'm sure I don't know all the organizations. I mean, we're fairly unique because we put a lot of our energy into the education and the organizing, and that's our first, you know, that's our primary.
And Connect has a training institute.
Yeah, and we're just like right now we are doing we have a 4-day intensive that's 4 Fridays, consecutive Fridays. We have 45 people there coming up this Friday for their 3rd Friday. And
Who are they?
They come
Where do
from,
they come from?
They come from some social service agencies and some domestic violence programs that, you know, realize they need to get their staff trained from shelters. But there are also people from fatherhood programs there. We've been doing a lot of work with fatherhood programs to get them to understand the role of male violence and all this difficult stuff around children and child support and fathers, and that's a whole other show. And also people from churches, individuals who want to do the work. Sometimes we have doulas, we have a range of people who, and I think one of the ways that we do contribute to the conversation is by getting people to see the places that are not the usual places that we think of when we think of domestic violence, but how, you know, honestly, people that aren't in the domestic violence field see probably more domestic violence than people who work in a shelter, because you know,
because
so they're all
out.
They're out, and so there are all these places that we need to work at. So we've been able to gather a lot of people.
Like school teachers and
We have some school teachers. We've been doing quite a bit of work in the schools, and that is, you know, deeply discouraging, honestly. I mean, discouraging in the sense that the young people have so much interpersonal and intimate violence in their lives, and the schools can't really attend to it. And we're just lucky to be in a few schools.
And you go back to the poverty. I'm not saying that all people who are poor are either depressed or there's something wrong or there's, you know, but the stress of being poor.
Yeah, and the fact.
And the stress of not having a job. I mean, the figures always go up when the unemployment goes up.
Yeah.
These are all things that are part of what happens.
And you don't have access to resources. And you're, you know, when you're afraid that the police are going to shoot you, why are you going to call on your, you know, partner?
Or you're going to be deported.
So we really do need different forms of justice. We need transformative justice, And
Which
you
is
know, well, that's
quickly.
that's quickly when the person who's harmed is able to speak their truth into, say, a group of people. I mean, there are many forms of it, but this is just the generic. But you know, the person who's harmed gets to speak their harm, speak their experience. There are people who can hear that, witness that, validate that, and then the person who's done the harm is held accountable in a way that the person they've hurt gets to say what that is, you know, and the community becomes a part of it. This is what these are the kinds of
You can read about these on your website.
Well, yes.
A lot?
Yes, yeah, a lot of it. You can read a lot of it. More coming. But I would like to recommend.
What's the website?
The website is www.connectnyc.org. And there's 2 great new books. One is called Arrested Justice by Beth Ritchie, and the other one is called A Troubled Marriage by Lee Goodmark, and I really highly recommend those to people.
Well, I hope that people will go to the website, and also, if they're interested, to contact you.
Oh, please. Yeah.
I mean,
and if they want to partner with us, or we can be of any assistance, if they'd like to get education, we have lots of education. And we do a lot of circles. We have a men's roundtable, a faith roundtable, a women's circle, because we really believe that these spaces create a lot of change, where we just talk and share our experience and think about how we can change it.
And it's filled with people who are loving and peaceful and very generous. Thank you very much, Sally MacNichol.
Ronnie.
If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.